Does everyone who sits here get COVID?
If you get it, it'll be 3 from 3, and I'll be here chatting with the cleaner in Bulgarian.
So I get to ask anything I want?
Within reason.
Should I be using my super to buy a house?
That's the $1 million question. Or if you keep watching, the $5 million question.
Tease!
The PM has used the official Liberal Party campaign launch, apparently the past 5 weeks have been part of a quasi-campaign, to unveil the political equivalent of this.
It's going to get there. He turned 32 yesterday. Does he have a vintage moment in him? In the end zone! It is caught for the win!
Morrison's Hail Mary pass involves allowing people like you to use your superannuation to buy a house.
And that's why a re-elected coalition government will allow first home buyers to invest a responsible portion of their own superannuation savings into their first home.
If you're a first home buyer, you can use up to 40% of your super, up to $50,000, to help buy a home, and it's $100,000 for couples. There are no caps on eligibility other than you must have saved a 5% deposit. So if you're buying a $500,000 house, you would need $25,000. Have you got $25,000? No. Because like every sensible young person, you're drinking your savings. Let's make the heroic assumption that you do have 25 large and are going to buy your very own home.
What's up, y'all? Big Snoop D-O-double-G. I want to welcome y'all to my house, the dog house.
What's the upside and the downside of rating your super to do that? It's all about the maths. For the purposes of this experiment, we're going to assume that house prices and your super both go up by about 8% a year, which is not far off the long-term 20 or 30-year average. In 30 years' time, your $500,000 house could be worth more than $5 million.
Sweet.
$5 million is not worth $5 million in 30 years because of inflation, but even adjusting for that, it's still a lot. And if your mortgage is $450,000 instead of $500,000, you'll save $40,000 in interest.
Even better.
Yeah. But the $50,000 that's tied up in your house will not be growing your nest egg, which over the past 20 or 30 years has also averaged 8%. The $50,000 in super would be worth a bit over $500,000 in 30 years. Again, 500 large in 2052 isn't 500 large today, but it's still good bank. It'll be a bit less because you have to pay 15% tax on your earnings.
Now I'm confused again.
The question is, can you afford to buy that house without raiding your nest egg? Because if you can, then you should leave your superannuation alone. Ideally, at age 65, you'll have in today's money an extra $190,000 in super and a house worth $1.8 million. But that would involve making some lifestyle changes because the extra $50,000 in debt you've taken out because you've left your super alone is going to raise your minimum monthly repayments by a couple of $100.
Why is the rum gone?
So is Morrison's home ownership plan better than Albanese's?
The Morrison plan has one obvious flaw. When you sell the house, you need to return the amount you took from your super to your super, plus a proportion of any capital gain. So what happens in 3 years' time when you want to upgrade your house because you've had a baby and there's another one on the way? You sell your $500,000 house for $600,000. You make a 20% gain, say. But you need to return $50,000 to your super plus 20%, so $60,000. Disappears back into your nest egg. And you can't use the super money again because it's a one-time deal. Now, your new house is $800,000 and you need a 20% deposit. That's $160,000. Even with 20% capital growth on your first house, you're going to have paid off a lot more than your minimum monthlies to have that much money left over after the sale's completed.
So I'd be trapped.
Yes, you would. That's the downside of Morrison's proposal, but it's got one big advantage over Labor's housing plan, which is you can actually understand it. This was Tanya Plibersek trying to explain Labor's shared equity policy.
It works in Western Australia. Well, look, the trend over the long period is that house prices are generally going up.
Under Labor's plan, your mortgage will be lower because the government will own part of your house, up to 40% of new homes and 30% of existing homes. The government will reclaim its stake when you sell the house, and you can increase your equity by buying out the government share as you can afford to do it.
So, Tanya, what about your policy? The fact that the government will own part of your house, house prices are on their way down. Then what? What if you have to sell?
There are 10,000 places over 4 years, and to qualify, you need a 2% deposit, you need to qualify for a standard home loan, be buying a home that's less than $550,000 in Perth and $400,000 in the country, and you can't earn more than $90,000 a year for singles and a combined $120,000 for couples.
Okay, so I decided, oh shit, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper.
That's complicated.
Just ask Tanya.
Is it taxable income or gross income, Tanya? Just tell me, which one is it?
Barnaby, honestly.
She doesn't know.
Can you explain your own policies, Tanya?
She can't.
It's your policy.
Wow.
It's the last week of the election. Is it taxable or gross income, Tanya?
While her leader had the good grace to admit head-on he didn't know the unemployment rate,
Sorry, I'm not sure what it is.
Plibersek decided she would buy some time so her off-camera advisor could Google the answer and whisper it to her.
This is a plan to help 10,000 Australians
Tanya, can you answer
into
that
a home
question
of
of
their
Barnaby?
own. And Barnaby's...
It took 1 minute and 4 seconds, but she got there eventually.
Everyone's trying to work it out.
Question.
Tanya, can you answer that one?
It's their income. It's their taxable income. I don't know why it's so complicated for Barnaby.
Tanya, when you're getting outsmarted by the beetrooter, you know you've got a problem.
If it's someone their advisor just told her.
The overly complex architecture of Labor's policy allowed Morrison to do what Morrison does best. Get smirky.
There are no complex rules about income thresholds or who gets what. When you're doing an improvement, you don't have to check with the government every time you go to Bunnings to buy a can of paint.
I thought we'd seen the back of Smirky Scott. He's meant to have a new image.
Leopards and spots.
I know there are things that are going to have to change with the way I do things.
ScoMo's personality makeover, where he's ditched the autocratic spin in favour of talking from the heart, is straight out of Julia Gillard's playbook. In 2010, in an act of utter desperation, Gillard's spin doctors decided to let Gillard be Gillard, which itself was a strategy straight out of the West Wing.
You have a strategy for all this? I have the beginnings of one. What is it? I'm going to try that for a little while.
Labor launched the Let Gillard Be Gillard strategy just ahead of the 2010 election. She scraped in with a 38% primary vote. That was the lowest primary vote for a winning government on record.
What's Morrison's primary vote on track to be?
35%. So Anthony Albanese is probably going to be your new housemate.
How do you do, fellow kids?
But you're probably not going to be able to afford that home anyway, because the only way to make housing more affordable is to actually build more houses. Anytime there's a new government incentive, it just pushes up the median price, which makes it harder for you. But it's great for your mum and dad. You're still going to need a miracle.
Ho! Hail Mary!
I'm Ben Harvey. For more Up Late, click the subscribe button below.